Hello everyone, Timbo here, and today I'm going to be showing you something I stumbled across called Godot Boy. Some of you may know that me, along with Moonbit, created a system for running Game Boy ROMs as executable files so they could be sold on Steam. This was done to release BubbleFrog DX, my creation, and it was a solution to a problem that we had. I couldn't release my game on Steam as just a ROM file, so this was a way of packaging it all together. Since then, someone by the name of GreenFox has created something considerably simpler and nicer to use than Bubble Wrap. Now, some people may be thinking, well, what's the point of a way of wrapping up a ROM file for the Game Boy? Because, that's illegal. ROM files are piracy and all of that. That's not actually true. With tools such as GB Studio, a very simple and easy to use system, you can create your very own Game Boy games from scratch and then release them and sell them and whatever. And having a way of wrapping them in an executable means that then you can legitimately sell them on stores like Steam. This is the post that I stumbled across by GreenFox 1505, and it outlines how to download and use this tool, but I'm going to take people through it because just because you know how to use GB Studio doesn't mean you have any idea how to use Godot. So this is going to be a step-by-step guide on how to get your game all set up and ready to go. First thing you'll want to do is click this link here, which will take you to a page where you're able to download this example or template file for Godot. So if you just click on code up here, and then you'll want the zip file most likely. So you click on that and it'll let you download the file. You will also need Godot. You can get it through the official Godot website or the itch.io official page and download the version that you need. Very, very small file sizes. You can see Godot is a very lightweight engine. So once you have downloaded the file, you will need to open it up and then extract this file somewhere that you remember the location of. So I have put it here in my data folder. Next, when you open up Godot, you will see a list of your projects and the ability to create a project, but what we want to click is Import Project. Then if you navigate to where the folder you extracted is, so mine is here, and then we want to select the project.godot file, and then import. And here is the project. Everything is already built, all of the add-ons are already installed, and so if we click this little icon up here, as you can see, GB Studio's example game loads up. Be warned, this is very, very loud. I've turned it down for you guys, but oh, this is deafening for me. And the controls are already plugged in to simulate the ones from GB Studio. So you can run your game, and everything uses the controls that we all know and love. So if I close this, how do you swap it out for your ROM? Back here in our file manager, if we just go into the folder and then ROMs, as you can see, game.gb, that is the example game. But if we go back to our download folder, I have my own one, game.gbc, which is BubbleFrog DX. So if I just drag this in here, there we go, and I will delete game.gb, just to stop any chance of confusion. And now if we go back here and click on this little icon again, there's my game. But this looks pretty plain and boring with just a black background, so let's see what we can do to make this a bit nicer. So if I open this back up and we leave the ROMs folder, and I will go here where I have grabbed a background image that was made for BubbleFrog, and then we go back into the editor, and as you can see, the background image that I dragged in is now showing up in the file structure for the project. Right, so we are going to right-click on main and then add child node, and we want a texture rectangle, or rect. There we go, that's that little box there. but on the right hand side over here, I want to load and then our game background. We'll drag it to the top because the higher things up are on this list, the further back they are in the layers. And we want to get rid of this background that we had in the project in the first place. There we go. So now at the top here you can see we have anchors. We want to fill our screen full rect. There we go. So now when I click the preview button, looks all nice, but also when I expand it, as you can see, it is keeping the size of everything. Everything is staying centered. Now, you could wrap it up there and say the project is done. That would be presentable. A lot of people would probably like that. If you want to add a fancy screen beforehand, though, I will show you how to do that now. So the first thing we need to do is create a new scene. So we can click the little plus up here, and then we would like a 2D scene, and we will name this title and save it. There we go. So now we can add in some stuff. So we want to add a child node, texture rec. We want to load in the title screen image that I have, which I will just drag over from here. There we go. So as you can see, it doesn't actually fit the window. You can see the little outline here that shows the size of the window, but if we also go into preview, it doesn't look correct. So what we're going to do is add a child node, canvas layer, and then we're going to drag the texture rect into the canvas layer. Now up here we want to click this little circle with a cross in it and set it to full rect. As you can see, that once again doesn't actually fit the window. So now we want to go over to the expand mode and change this to ignore size. There we go, it now fits. So if we click on preview, perfect. Next, let's add in a little bit of text. So child node, and then label, and let's add in here start game. If we then scroll down to theme overrides and font size, and we will change this to, let's say, 100. How does that look? There we go, that's looking good. And we want to anchor this to the center bottom of the screen. There we go. So just to show you what that anchoring has done, no matter how much we stretch it around, that will always stay in the center bottom of the screen. You can anchor to any position on the screen, but it'll always then stay that way no matter how much you stretch it around. Now let's add a button. And this button we want to make the entire size of the screen. And then if we scroll down to visibility and modulate, and we'll make the button invisible. So once we made this button invisible, we will need to add a script to the title screen. So if we just right click here and then attach script, and we want to name this, so start game script, doesn't matter what you call it, that's just what I'm going to call mine. Don't be intimidated by the fact that we're delving into code. It's really, really simple stuff that I'm going to take you through. So now we can go back to our button, and on the right hand side here, next to inspector, we have node. If you click on node and then double click pressed, and you've got to pick which script we want to attach it to. We've only got the one script, so we click connect, and now we've got on button pressed has been added to this script. So we want to remove pass, and in its place we want to type in get underscore tree, open close brackets, dot change scene to file, and as you can see it autofills there, so we just press enter, and then in these brackets we want to put speech marks and we want to select main. There we go, and now I will save, and if we now run this and I click, there we go. Now you might want to also have it that when you press a button on your gamepad it'll also automatically start. So to get this working with a controller input, we can type in func space underscore input and then let it fill in the rest. And then here we want to type in if event dot action is action pressed, and then we select GB underscore A. And just to show you, if you go into project settings and then from your general tab go across to input map, in this project the developer has already set it up so GB underscore A is joypad 1, Z on a keyboard or J on a keyboard. So we can close that. Then at the end of this we want to put a colon. Then on the next line we can simply copy the script that we created up here and paste it in here, and the red should go away. Now if we drop a save, and I will get my controller ready and I will launch a test, and then I press the A button. There we go. Now there's loads more you can do with this. You could add in intro videos on that title screen, you could add music and animated stuff if you wanted to, you can add in a settings menu for volume and so on. All of that can be done by watching very simple, straightforward tutorials on YouTube of how to use Godot. I recommend a tutorial creator called, it's either GWiz or Gwiz. It's spelled Gwizz. I don't know why I'm spelling this out. I will put a link in the description. His stuff is very, very simple. He explains it very well, but also very quickly. He does not get bogged down like I do in rambling like this. One other thing I would like to show before going on to exporting your project is 3D. So if you really, really want to get fancy, you can do something like this. So we will create a new scene, and this time we want a 3D scene. And up here at the top, we can switch over to 3D, and this is our 3D space now. We will call this Gameboy 3D. There we go, and let's save this scene. So now I'm going to right click, add child node, and I'm going to just put in a box. So CSG box 3D, create, and then I'm just going to stretch it out to be a good size for this. You can hold down right click and use WAS to move your camera around. It's quite nice and feels good for navigating stuff. Right. So now we can right click, add child node, and we want a sub viewport. And in this sub viewport, we are going to drag in our main.tscn. This is the file, as you no doubt remember, runs the actual Game Boy. Oh, let's go back here and then 3D. We now also want to add in a click on the right one, another child node, and we want a sprite 3D this time. And if I switch from node back over to inspector, and the texture, I want a new viewport texture, and then we can select that sub viewport that we created. And as you can see, looks like nothing's there, but that's because it's actually inside this object. So if we just click and drag it forward, there it is in 3D space. And I'm going to go to transform and just drag down its scale. And then we can set up a camera. Camera 3D. Drag that out and bring it up about level with it. This is all just guesswork, but obviously you want it a bit more polished in your version. We will drop another save and run this. There we go. It obviously doesn't look like 3D, but if we just drag this camera to the side and rotate it around and now press the preview, The reason this could be handy is you could actually have like a 3D Game Boy in the center of the screen, and then you could have stuff moving around in the background. You could have a 3D environment. You could even attach this camera to a first-person controller and have them run around in the world and then be able to walk up to a 3D object, like a 3D Game Boy, and begin playing the game if you wanted to. I'm also going to include a tutorial in the description for how to create a first-person controller within a 3D space in Godot. But now, with all of this done and me over-explaining everything, now let's just get to the final part, which is how to export your project. So first things first, we want to go down into our selection of files here, and either main or, like with me, title, we want to right-click it and click on Set as Main Scene. This just means that when you boot up the program, this is the first scene that the player will be introduced to. Now, at the top, we want to go to Project, Export, and you'll be presented with this export window, which seems a little bit intimidatingly empty right now. Don't worry, we just click Add, and for now I'm just going to show the Windows desktop, but as you can see there's lots of other options you can look into as well. So we click on Windows Desktop. I would recommend ticking this Embed PCK. I would also recommend turning off Export Console Wrapper. Now we click Export Project. And then we get to name it, so Bubble Frog. And I'm just going to save this to my desktop, one moment. So now I just click Save. There we go. It comes up with this error for me quite often. I should probably actually do something about it, but it doesn't seem to affect the actual game. As you can see here, we've got an exe called Bubble Frog. I double click it, and then drag this up from my other menu. And if I just click, the game begins. And that's pretty much it for the basics. I hope you find this useful. I'm sorry that it was a bit rambly. I may do another video at some point where I go into much more detail about creating a 3D environment or maybe adding settings, but to be honest, it's pretty simple to work that stuff out yourself if you just look up tutorials on how to use Godot. It's a very, very simple tool. I'm dyslexic and have the attention span of an ant, and I've still managed to learn the basics of Godot myself. So do not feel intimidated. This really is the optimal way right now of getting Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games running as executables for Mac, Linux, and Windows, as well as apparently mobile APK. I've not really looked into that myself. But yeah, this is just the best option out there right now. And I'm saying that as someone who co-ran Bubble Wrap. And yeah, I'll put my hands up and say this is vastly better than the option that we were offering. So I hope you have fun with this, and I hope I didn't bore you too much, and look forward to seeing a lot more Game Boy games on Steam. Right, thanks for your time, ta-ra!